Hello?
So Jason, you can start. We will have to have a hard stop at 12:55. And if the kids have any questions and stuff, great. Yeah, so because we have to
So
continue.
Jason,
Hello? Wait. Hello, Letitia.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you.
And my screen is showing.
Yes, it's showing.
Okay, cool. I keep getting some either kicked out or to stop sharing. So I want to make sure. If anything happens whilst I'm talking, just let me know so I can.
Okay. Yeah, if you
just
can put it on full screen, full slide or whatever it's called. But yeah, it's working. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. And so do you want me to just run it through like a lecture and like no questions or whatever?
No, engage with them. Some of the kids are already here. We have Sadiq and Raymond, and there's a Shaduma Kate also. So teach it like you're gonna teach in class, you know,
Yeah.
and then ask them questions and stuff. So when they are watching, even without you, they will understand exactly what you are hoping them to get.
Sure.
So yeah,
Okay,
teach
cool.
them like you were doing it face to face with them.
Cool.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
So team, students, Ben, Sadiq, we have Jason. Jason is part of EBI team. He's a PhD candidate at in UK, and he's a scientist. And today he's going to teach us how to research on infectious diseases. What is infectious disease? All those things. And then when he is done, he'll give us his assignment, and we will go to our communities and stuff and find out the disease in our community and then do a research on it. And when we are done, when the team comes to Ghana, you guys will present your facts and your findings about the diseases that you guys picked. Okay. So I'm gonna yield to almost Dr. Jason.
Not quite yet. Cool. Hi everyone. Like Lisa said, my name is Jason. I think some have met me already, but if not, then nice to meet you all today. Today we'll be talking about infectious diseases, and I think it's a very important topic to discuss, especially with what is going on in the world right now. So as I get started, does anyone want to tell me what they think an infectious disease is? Anyone? Can you guys hear me? Hello.
Yeah, yeah. Can you hear me? I can hear you.
Okay. I was getting no feedback, so I was wondering if maybe my internet's acting up again.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think someone already responded to the infectious disease, but yeah, basically it's a disease disorder, caused by like organisms, like virus and parasites and like bacteria and all that.
that's good. That's a good one. Someone just said disease transmitted to people through the environment. Yeah, that's also true. So today we're going to look at how what infectious diseases are and what causes them. We also want to know how they are spread because that's a big knowing how they spread can help us combat them, and also to understand how we can map infectious diseases when there's an outbreak, for example, coronavirus. So, next slide. Some of the key questions we're going to ask ourselves today are what are infectious diseases, what causes them to, and how did they spread? So Benjamin already gave an answer, but infectious diseases is any infectious is a disease that you can catch from something or someone. So these are caused by infectious agents such as germs or pathogens. There are four main types of pathogens, and these are bacteria, viruses, fungus, and parasites. I have a short video here for us to watch that will help to explain what infectious diseases are. So let me know if you can see the video and can hear it. 1 second.
continue to affect millions of people. New diseases like Ebola and MERS-CoV have sprung up, causing deadly outbreaks and killing thousands of people. Let's have a look at what happens when a person gets infected and talk about some terms that are used to describe infectious diseases. When an organism enters the body, some people fight it off with their immune system, while others can go on to develop disease. People are likely to develop disease if they have weakened immune systems. This could be due to drugs, age, or other disease. They're also more likely to develop the disease if they're not immune to it. For example, if they haven't had the disease before or if they haven't been vaccinated. The time from when someone gets infected to when symptoms start is called the incubation period. The clinical stage of the disease is marked by the onset of symptoms. There can be considerable variation in the clinical stage, ranging from very mild symptoms to very severe symptoms. The disease lasts until the infection has resolved or the person dies. Now, for some important terms that you'll hear when describing infectious diseases. The infectious period is the time during which the infected person can spread the disease and infect others. Sometimes people may not have any symptoms, but still be able to infect others. These people are called carriers. Case fatality is a measure of the severity of a disease. It is the proportion of people that die from being infected. For example, if 6 out of 10 people with the disease die from it, the case fatality is 60%. The basic reproductive rate is a term that describes how infectious a disease is. It is the average number of secondary cases that occurs as a result of one infected individual. For example, measles can have a basic reproductive rate of up to 15. This means that one case of measles can cause up to 15 other cases of measles. Another way to measure infectiousness and the spread of disease is the secondary attack rate. This is the proportion of people who are exposed to the disease that develop an infection. For seasonal influenza, it's about 10%, meaning 1 out of every 10 susceptible people exposed to an influenza case will develop the infection. Now, let's have a look at some important categories of infectious diseases. Zoonotic diseases are diseases of animals which, when transmitted to humans, can cause disease. It is estimated that over 60% of human infectious diseases are zoonotic. Examples of zoonotic diseases include diseases like leptospirosis, toxoplasmosis, campylobacter, and rabies. An emerging infectious disease is a disease that has appeared in the population for the first time, or one that may have existed previously but is rapidly increasing in incidence or geographical range. Examples of emerging infectious diseases include MERS-CoV, Ebola, Hendra, and new influenza strains. Neglected tropical diseases are a group of tropical diseases that affect the poorest countries of the world. Traditionally, they have not received much global attention but continue to cause illness in the most vulnerable groups of people in the world. They include diseases like leishmaniasis, trachoma, sleeping sickness, and schistosomiasis. Vector-borne diseases are diseases that are transmitted from an infected animal or human to another person through the bite of a vector. The most common vector is the mosquito. Others include ticks, flies, fleas, or snails. Examples of vector-borne diseases are malaria, dengue, sleeping sickness, and schistosomiasis. Vector-borne diseases are responsible for over 17% of all infectious diseases and cause more than 1 million deaths each year. So that's a quick introduction to infectious diseases, what they are, some terms to describe them, and a few different types.
Okay, so we looked at what infectious diseases are. But before we understand what infectious diseases are, we need to know what cells are. Cells are the basic building blocks of life. Every single living thing is made up of cells. So plants, humans, animals, bacteria, viruses, they're all made up of cells. There are 2 main types of cells, eukaryotes and prokaryotes. Eukaryotes are cells that contain a nucleus. So animals and plant cells have eukaryotic cells. And prokaryote cells are cells that do not contain a nucleus, for example, bacteria. So I'm going to run through the next, the types of pathogens that there are. Can anyone remember what the 4 types of pathogens are? We already mentioned them in the video. Feel free to put it in the chat if you want. Bacteria, yeah, that's one of them. Any others? Parasite. There's two more. Fungus, yep, and one more. Virus. Well done. Okay, so bacteria. So make my screen large. Okay, so bacteria, they produce toxins, which are poisonous substances which harm our cells. Basically, when bacteria enters your body, it tries to multiply as quickly as possible. And so the more bacteria that's in your body, the more toxins, which means you feel even more unwell. So it's kind of weird actually, because you get toxins from the bacteria, and the plan is to stop the bacteria as soon as possible, because the more it multiplies, the more bacteria there is in your body, which is going to release more toxins into your body, and that's going to affect you even more. An example of a bacteria is E. coli, which gives food poisoning. Has anyone ever had food poisoning? You don't have to admit it if you have it before. Viruses. So viruses cannot survive on their own. They infect a host. So for example, humans, so they infect us. And then they replicate thousands of times, and then they burst out the cells to infect the nearby cell. And this damages the host cells, which is what makes them feel unwell. Can anyone give me an example of a virus that we are all struggling with right now? Anyone?
So some is the coronavirus that we're struggling with now.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so fungus. So fungus, they produce bacteria toxins just like bacteria, and these are harmful to humans, plants, and animals as well. Basically, they colonize tissues, which basically means they grow on top of the tissues. For example, the skin, and then this causes them to be itchy and scaly and all sorts. An example of a fungus is ringworm. And last of all, parasites. So parasites, they live inside a host, and they get their food from the host. So they basically eat your food. A funny story, actually. So, well, I actually heard somewhere that apparently some people use parasites as a way to lose weight. So they actually put parasites inside them, so the parasite will eat the food, so that they don't put on weight. I definitely would not recommend that as a diet plan, but some people have tried it before. So, can anyone give me an example of infectious diseases? And you are not allowed to say coronavirus because we've already spoken about that. I want 5 examples of infectious diseases.
Cholera.
Did someone say cholera? Any others?
HIV/AIDS.
Yep, that's a good one. So because of time, I'll go on to my next slide. So examples of some infectious diseases: flu, Zika virus, polio, hepatitis. There's different types of hepatitis: hepatitis B, A, C, Ebola, and coronaviruses such as COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2 as it's called scientifically. Oh, I'll go back. Can anyone tell me how they think infectious diseases spread? How do you think diseases have been spreading? For example, COVID-19, how do you think that's been spread around the entire world? Anyone?
Yeah, it spreads through contact with others.
Through contact with others? Yep, well done. That's probably the main way that viruses or infectious diseases can be spread, through direct contact. Any others that anybody else can think of? Okay, no worries. I'll go through them. Okay, so we've already had direct contact. So direct contact is if I have a virus and someone comes and either shakes my hand or touches me somewhere, that's how I can pass on whichever disease I have onto them. Indirect contact, that can be, say for example, I'm sat on this chair right now and I have a virus and I put my hand all over the chair or even all over the table. And then I leave and someone comes and sit in the same place, puts their hand on their table, and then maybe puts on their face or whatever. That's how these diseases can be spread as well. So that's known as indirect contact. So I haven't directly touched the person, but they've been in the same area that I've been in and touched the same things that I've touched. Water, dirty water, for example, cholera. Cholera is through water. Airborne, so through the air, which is why they're telling us to wear masks and stuff like that. And food. So, for example, E. coli, we looked at food poisoning. So that's another way that infectious diseases can be spread. So how can infectious diseases be mapped? So when a disease spreads, we need to be able to trace it to help us be able to understand where it's coming from and where it's going. I'm going to show you a quick video of how this was done back in the olden days with one disease, and then we can look at how we do it in the modern day time. Just
Hey, folks, meet John Snow. He's called the father of epidemiology, and if you know what that means, I'm impressed. I had to check it out. It's science speak for the study of diseases. John Snow was a cool and nerdy doctor back in the 1800s who made a big impact on public health, and we're going to find out about him. John Snow was born in York, England in 1813. He lived at the same time as Abraham Lincoln, Queen Victoria, Charles Dickens, and Mary Seacole. His family didn't have much money and they lived in a small house in York. His father was a labourer in the coal yard, and and little John was the first of 9 children. John Snow's father started out poor, but he worked hard, saved his money, and soon he bought a horse and cart and set up a transport business. John was able to go to school and learn to read and write, unlike many children of poor parents. He was a maths brain box from an early age and did well in class. At 14, he left school and travelled north to be an apprentice to an apothecary in Newcastle. There were no official medical schools. You needed to learn from an apothecary who treated the sick with potions, creams, and herbal remedies. Shortly afterwards, he did what we would call an internship with Mr. Warburton, another licensed apothecary near York. He studied hard, saved money, and lived quietly with Mr. Warburton and his family. He became a vegetarian, an unusual lifestyle choice in those days. He was also teetotal, which means he drank no alcohol at all. Today, he might have been a fitness freak, but back then, he was known as an exceptional swimmer, plunging into the cold River Tyne in northern England. His apprenticeship's finally over. John Snow set off for London, where he enrolled in a private medical college set up by John Hunter, a distinguished doctor. Now he started practicing medicine and soon became a respected member of the Royal College of Physicians. He had arrived! Now, imagine having your leg amputated with no pain relief. Anesthetics were still in the early stages, and it was our guy John Snow who worked out how to use ether and chloroform safely in medical operations. He was such a pro at anesthesia that Queen Victoria herself asked him to administer chloroform when she gave birth to her 8th and 9th children.
Do put me under, Mr. Snow.
But his biggest moment came in 1854 with a bad outbreak of that nasty disease cholera in Broad Street in the middle of London. Hang on a minute, what exactly is cholera? It's a disease that attacks your intestine. The bacteria lives in human poo. After the first signs of vomiting and diarrhea, without medical help, you can be dead in a few hours. But no one knew how it was spreading. Back then, people didn't have running water in their homes. They came out to a pump in the street to collect water in buckets. Good old John Snow. He had a hunch that it was transmitted through dirty water. How could he prove this? Methodical and nerdy, he made a map of the area around the Broad Street water pump. 500 deaths within 250 metres of the water pump showed him that the dirty water from the pump was the source of the disease. He was so sure of his theory that he asked the London town officials to remove the handle of the pump so that no one could draw water. Almost instantly, the cholera outbreak disappeared. It turned out that a baby's poo-filled nappy infected with cholera had been washed in water that had leaked into the Broad Street well. Other doctors were not convinced. They thought that the disease floated around in smelly air called miasma. It wasn't until the next cholera outbreak that they all saw that John Snow's theory was right. Cholera spreads through dirty water. Poor John Snow, he didn't live long. He never married and, despite his healthy lifestyle, he died of a stroke, alone in his London home at only 45. But I think he'd be pleased to know that his name still lives on now, almost 200 years later, as the father of epidemiology.
Okay, so does everyone understand how he did that? Any questions about it? About how he mapped the spread of cholera? Or does anyone have any questions about it? Okay, so I've got a question for you guys. What modern ways can we use to map the outbreak of diseases? What do we do these days? Any ideas? Anyone? Okay, I'll give you guys an example. So here in the UK, to try and understand how COVID is spreading, there is something called the NHS app, or the NHS COVID-19 app, which basically whenever you go anywhere, so you go to any restaurant, you go to any place in the public, you basically scan the app to say you've been here, and it logs basically where you've been. So if there's an outbreak, or if there's someone has tested positive of the virus when you were there at that time, then you will also be told to isolate in case you have also got the disease. So it's obviously a lot quicker than it used to be back in the cholera times, where he was basically making maps. And also here, it's a lot more, it's electronic. So you just log where people have been at a certain day or certain time. And if anyone tests positive, they basically look at where they've been in the last few days. And if it's then everybody who's basically been in contact with that person will then be told to isolate. And that's one way of making sure the disease doesn't spread. So you map where people have been. Another example is travel history. So when you travel, you and you come back, you're told to basically write where you've been. So I remember a couple of years ago, I actually got ill when I went to Asia, and when I came back, I got dengue fever, which is also another infectious disease. And they basically asked me where I've been in the last few days. So I told them I've been to Thailand, I've been to Vietnam, and whatnot. And later on, I realized that apparently there'd been a dengue fever outbreak in Thailand when I was there. So if I hadn't mapped, or if I hadn't told them where I had been, no one would have known how I got dengue fever. But it was because they checked your travel history to see where you've been. That's one way of mapping diseases. Another way is through public health. So just basically looking at the data of where people are getting ill. So right now in the UK, there's a few places in the UK where coronavirus the cases are a lot higher than everywhere else. Some parts of the north, some parts near London. People are the cases are a lot higher there than everywhere else. So people there are told to basically isolate and to take care, because where they are, they're more likely to catch coronavirus instead of rather than the other places where the rest of us are. So those are 3 ways. Does anyone have any other examples that they can think of, which I may not have added? Okay. So quick recap of what we looked at today. So we've looked at infectious disease, which is an illness that you can catch from something or someone else. There are 4 main types of pathogens or germs, so bacteria, virus, fungi, and parasites. And infectious diseases are spread through different ways, such as direct contact, airborne, indirect contact, water, food, and all sorts. Okay, so I have a little assignment for you before the next session. So I want you guys to write a 300-word essay describing an infectious disease, which we have discussed or not discussed during the tutorial. It doesn't have to be mentioned. You can go and research your own infectious disease that you can think of and write about it. And I want you to write in this 300-word essay why you think this is a threat to the public health, and how we can stop or reduce the spread of this disease. The more different the infectious disease, the better, because we've all heard of kind of like the common ones. And the one rule that I have is that I don't want anybody to write about coronavirus, because I'm bored of that, and I'm sure everyone else is bored of that. So look at more interesting, not that infectious disease that interesting, but yeah. And that is me for today. So next session, I want us to look at how we can reduce the spread of a disease. So, yep. Any questions? Everything clear for everyone then? So there are no questions. Letitia, Ben, anything you guys want to add as well, or are we good? Can you guys hear me? Hello? Anyone in the house? Hello, can you guys hear me?
Jason?
Yep.
Okay. My computer was acting crazy. I had to restart it. Hold up. How do I log in? Create again. And leave.
I don't know if people heard what I've been saying or not because no one said anything. So I don't know if I've just been here.
Okay, sorry. I'm back. I am back.
Can you hear me, Letitia?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry, I missed
Okay.
I think 5 minutes or so minutes. Anything that I missed, stop, Karen. Oh my God, sorry.
Okay. I'm not sure if people heard the final assignments or if they heard the last few bits because no one responded. So I don't know if my
Okay.
computer was
What
being
the
weird or
final
not.
assignment?
So I was basically I'll share the screen again. I was basically saying I want people to
Sorry, I'm listening.
I want people to write a 300-word essay describing an infectious disease and why it's a threat to public health and how it can be stopped or reduced.
Okay. Okay. I will send this to them in so I'm gonna upload the slide, everything on a Google Classroom, and then give them a place to type their stuff. So I will send them everything. I'll package everything together and send it to them by tomorrow.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Thank you, Jason. Anyone have any question for him? Any comments? Anything? Okay. If nothing, then in 4 minutes or so, we're gonna switch to Sri Lanka presentation. And as I said, I will send you guys the recording, the instructions, the link to the YouTube link, instructions for Jason, from Jason, and also send you guys the slideshow so you guys can go over it like he did today. And then at the end of the slideshow, you have your assignments. Okay. Okay, let me log into my stuff. Well, JC, you saw that they enjoyed it, so that's what matters. Karen, stop being bad. Let me